In this video we are going to take a closer look at the Fox Knives Trapper, but I'm also recording another video simultaneously with this one, and that is a video showing the Fox Knives Combat Jungle. So these two knives are, well, they are pretty different in terms of blade design, etc., but they also share a few similarities in terms of handle design, sheath design, and some other features. And I'm not sure which video I will post first, but I will try to make a small comparison of the two knives in this video and in the Combat Jungle video as well. But let's start off by doing a unboxing and overview, specifications and all that. And I will say that I do have some previous experience with fixed blades from Fox Knives. I've done video about the Fox Rio, the Fox Rio Damascus, the Fox Monkey Thumper, and perhaps a few others that I can't remember on top of my head. But I've also done a lot of videos showing folding knives from Fox Knives, Italian knife maker. So let's start by doing an unboxing here. This is what the box looks like. As you can see, it is going to be quite a large knife because I can't fit it all in the camera or the box. Here we have some information, and yeah, well, this is what the box looks like for those interested in that. Opening the box up, well, this is pretty straightforward, as you can see. We got the knife inside of its sheath. We got some paperwork, some warranty papers, which I'm not gonna dive into because it's not super interesting. And I think this is just some hashtags, Facebook pages, etc. for Fox Knives and, well, stuff like that. Not super exciting. So let's put it aside here. So here is the sheath design with some straps, etc. to carry it attached also to your leg. We have this dangle design here. We got some information here. It says Fox Knives Military Division. That is not something that I have seen before. Well, I did see it on my Combat Jungle knife as well, but those are the only two knives where I've seen this patch. Yeah, you can of course easily remove the straps here, etc., if you do not wish to carry it that way. But you can tell that this, this sheath design here is definitely on the more, military / tactical side. You also have a small carrying or small pouch area here where you can put a sharpening stone of your preferences, or well, something else if you want a small flashlight or whatever you want to put inside there. Dual straps. But I do think the sheath feels sturdy, of high quality. But we're gonna focus less on that now and a bit more on the actual knife itself. So this is what the Trapper looks like. And I can honestly say that I have no other knife in my possession that looks like this one. Very different, well, blade design and geometry, grinds, etc. There is quite a lot going on here. And I'm not 100% sure how I'm gonna describe it all, but lucky for me, this is a video with some live footage, so you can probably make up your own mind. Anyways, let's start with the handle. Like I said, this handle shares, it's the same handle design as the Combat Jungle for those familiar with that knife. I wear size 10 in gloves, fairly large hands. Placing the knife in my hand looks like this. Got a lot of pretty good space here. Micarta handle, textured, not too rough or anything, matte finish, but it has a good feel in my hand. Finger choil, rounded. Actually, this finger choil is smaller than on the Fox Jungle, I realize now. Interesting. So I can say right away that I wouldn't have minded a slightly larger finger choil. This is still a full finger choil. But if you got beefier fingers than what I do, then it could potentially become an issue. That was not the case with the Combat Jungle. Interesting. On the back part here of the handle, you have an extended lanyard hole here. You got a bit of jimping going on the back side, probably for a reverse grip of sorts. Not that I would see myself using this knife design in a reverse grip, but I mean that should be why the jimping is here. I guess this one would also work as a that you can beat something with or crack something with without mentioning it further than that. The steel here of the knife is Böhler N690CO. I think I refer to it as N690C in the Combat Jungle video, but it is CO. And it is, in my opinion, improved version of the default Böhler N690 steel. So let's see, a balancing point here, right at the choil area. I think this knife is slightly more well balanced perhaps than the Combat Jungle, which was a bit more heavy, forward heavy, I would say. So the grinds here, how do we describe it? Well, first off we have this recurve, small recurve area. Then we have, well, a like tanto design, a bit drop pointish to it. This is just regular, well, not straight grind, but still. So I mean, there's a lot going on here, and there's some pretty complex. If you let's talk about the part here of the spine here. So first off, we have this. Oh man, I'm losing my words today. How annoying. Sort of a mini ramp here with the jimping, and the jimping is much as with the Combat Jungle. It's kind of rough, not really sharp, but it's you got some real traction going on here. And as with the Combat Jungle, I would have liked the jimping to start here, not back here, because when you have the knife like this, the jimping is not well, it's not really doing anything unless cause a bit of uncomfort. Not a deal breaker, and if you wear gloves, well, you're not going to notice it. But in my opinion, it would have been nice if the jimping actually started somewhere around here. Anyways, we got a bit of a swedge grind going on here, should be visible. Not a very fine swedge grind, but a swedge grind nonetheless, going down to the very tip. We also have some really interesting grinds here, like a more of a hollow grind here. Compound grind perhaps. There is a lot going on here. I hope you can see this, but I have a difficult time explaining everything that's going on this knife, but there is quite a lot going on. And in terms of practicality, well, I guess we'll have to see how practical it is. I don't mind a recurve. I think recurves can be nice. I don't mind tanto either. I think this one will be interesting to sharpen when the need for that arises. But this one it's a lot more complex than the Combat Jungle, which is a more straightforward knife compared to what you have here. And like I said, I do have quite a lot of knives in my collection, but I have no knife that looks even, remotely close to this specific grind. Anyways, let's take a look at the specifications for this one. Starting perhaps with overall length, or the total length, which is 296 millimeters, so 29.6 centimeters. So this knife is a bit smaller than the Combat Jungle. We have a blade length that is 167 millimeters. So yeah, a bit shorter than the Combat Jungle as well. We have a blade thickness that is specified to 6 millimeters, which means that this blade is in fact 1 millimeter thicker than the Combat Jungle, if the numbers that I were given are correct. I could see that it could be the case, but given those numbers, this is a pretty compact hefty knife, no doubt about it. And the weight of the knife is specified to 361 grams compared to the Combat Jungle, which I think is specified to 390 grams. So a bit of, a smaller but slightly more compact knife than the Combat Jungle. So I think that is perhaps it in terms of, design specifications and all that. Let's move on to the next segment, shall we? Before we move on, I did promise a comparison with the Combat Jungle, and that we should of course do, this being the Trapper, this being the Combat Jungle, a much more straightforward knife, sort of like a small machete design now that I think about it. So let's place them like this, and we can see that there is indeed a bit of both a size difference, but also a very large difference in geometry and stuff going on here with the actual blade itself. But sharing the same handle, but as you can see, a larger choil here on the Combat Jungle compared to the Trapper. It's time to slice some paper, and I've decided to record this segment outdoors or outside because we're having a really nice summer evening here. It was a bit windy before, but it's calmed down, so it's just nice being able to be outside and do these sorts of recordings as well. And we're gonna go with our regular 3 types of paper: printing paper, magazine paper, and newspaper, to get a bit of a variety here. And hopefully this knife will be kind of sharp. It should, be able to slice the paper. Most, if not all, of my knives made by Fox have been incredibly sharp, especially the folders, but the fixed blades as well. However, I do think that this is going to be a bit tricky due to the blade geometry and changes, from recurve to non-straight to tanto, etc. So it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be tricky in some senses. So let's see what we can make of it. But we're gonna start with the printing paper. Let's see. So I think it's going to be hard to get clean slices utilizing the entirety of the edge here due to some pretty sharp transitions or semi-sharp transitions, but I don't know. It's just that I think it's going to be tricky. But let's see what we can accomplish here. So I think I'm gonna go from like the middle part here of the recurve and then try to go as far as I can with full cuts. So let's try that. So it will slice the paper. It's perhaps not totally effortless, and that is, like I stated, due to the transitions. If I were to use only perhaps this part of the blade, from the recurve, the end of the recurve, up to where the tanto starts, I think we will see slightly smoother cutting performances. So I mean the edge is sharp, but due to the semi-complicated grind, it makes this sort of task a bit more, well, tricky, I would say. So let's see how we can utilize the tanto part of the blade. Let's remove these pieces of sliced up printing paper. So I think for the tanto part we're gonna try to, you know, push through the paper and then slice it like, you know, or more like well, not exactly, you know, how I was imagining doing this, but yeah, I mean, utilizing this in a paper slicing test, it's gonna be a bit, you know, tricky. Well, I think I'm gonna, you know, just go with that, and then we can move on to the other types of paper. Definitely one of the more challenging knives to do these kind of tests with. I can say right away that this knife was not designed to, you know, do paper slicing tests with. That is pretty obvious, I would say. Yeah. So it slices the paper, but it's the very same thing here as well with the transition between the designs of the blade. Let's use the reprobe a bit there. Yeah. Well, I mean, it will obviously slice magazine paper, but yeah, it is different to work with. That much I can say. So that leaves us with the newspaper for now. Could be interesting. So let's, it's a bit damp. Hopefully not a big problem. So let's go with this now, shall we? Well, it's starting to get a bit damp. It's been out for a little bit. I mean, it will obviously cut the newspaper, but like I said, it has gotten a bit damp here from the ground. But even so, you should get, you know, the general consensus here that it will slice the newspaper. Let's go with the recurve a bit as well. Yeah, definitely, you know, an interesting knife to do these sorts of sharpness tests with. Yeah, it's, yeah, well, I think this is how it is. The knife is sharp, the edge is sharp, but if you want to sit and slice paper with it, I would recommend you to utilize this part of the blade or partially a bit of the recurve. That's about it. Still outside, wind is picking up a little, but still quite nice. So what we're gonna do next here with this very interesting knife is that we are going to cut some pieces of leather. About the same thickness. This one is slightly thicker and slightly sturdier, I'd say. But yeah, both are in the same league. So let's see if we can use this knife for this. Here I think that the tanto and the tip will be good for penetrating the leather, and then we can use, well, mostly this part of the edge to cut, but the recurve would work as well, in theory. So let's see what we can accomplish here. So now we have less issues with the transitioning parts here than we did with the paper, since these pieces of leather isn't as, well, sensitive to these changes in geometry. So now we can actually utilize the full length of the blade in a better way. From tip to the lowest part here of the recurve. So this was a lot nicer to do than trying to slice paper using the entirety of the edge. Let's go with this sturdier piece as well. You can't even really notice now that when you go from the tip part, the tanto, to this edge, to the recurve, it is more or less non-noticeable. So that was a lot nicer to do than slicing paper. And we did get, you know, in my opinion, pretty clean cuts here. Hopefully it's visible. No rough sides or anything, but, you know, actually clean cuts all around. So that was the leather test of sorts, leather cutting test using the Trapper. Next up, we're gonna cut some paracord here. It may not be the thickest diameter, but we're gonna work with what we have. So let's, well, here's a slightly shorter piece than the other. So we can just, you know, make a test run of sorts, see how the edge performs. We can use the recurve, we can use the longer edge here, or we can use the, well, the top would be difficult. But let's use the main, I'm gonna call this the main edge, I think. So cutting off the paracord like this, no problem whatsoever. Let's put that aside for now. And then we can try to go with a bit more here. Let's see. So now we have a number of strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got 11 strings, which is, well, quite a lot actually. I can use once. Maybe we should try more, you know, down here with the recurve, perhaps. So let's see what we can we can do here. As seen, we did cut through everything here. The recurve was perhaps a good spot to cut these cords. So let's do a bonus thing here, using the, well, what I like to call the main edge then. Just getting them together a bit. Yeah. So, cutting paracord, well, it will cut paracord, no doubt about it. That was actually a pretty nice cutting experience. Very much, you know, like the leather, a pretty nice cutting experience, especially compared to what we did with the paper. So, yeah. Next up, we're gonna go for some feather sticking. See if we can make some fine feathers to get a fire started. So let's proceed here now, shall we? I mean, we are making some feathers, right? Some pretty decent feathers, even. But I do notice that I want to use this, once again, this, what I call the main edge, for making feathers. And having a bit of a, you know, longer edge will make it easier to make fine feathers. Let's continue here. Getting some nice curly feathers. Let's let's remove these. Perhaps go with one more piece of wood here and see if we can use some more. Once again, we do get, you know, nice curly feathers. Just need a few more. Once again, really curly feathers. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we do have a bit of feathers going on there. Could perhaps use even more. This is too thin. Let's go with this piece here perhaps. Perhaps not the best pieces of wood to make feathers of, but even so, I mean, if we just were to go with this would still be enough to, if we had some other slightly larger pieces and smaller wood pieces, etc. This could work to get a campfire going. Yep. So the knife will make feathers. So it's time for some wood carving, and as you can see there are already 2 carved pieces here. And that was not using this knife, that was using the Combat Jungle. But to make it, fair for, comparison aspects, I'm gonna use the same 2 sticks but the opposite side and see if we can make as nice tips or pointy tips on the other sides here. And I will state also that I'm wearing gloves here because the jimping, the ramp here with the jimping, and the jimping starting a bit in on the handle, going all the way here, it is aggressive. Or at least it's very sharp on the sides. And we also have the finger choil here, and it's pointy, right where the edges start here. So I want to save my hands a little bit. That is why I'm using gloves. If I were not using gloves, this would be a very different experience from a comfort perspective or aspect. So that is why I'm wearing gloves right now, because I feel like it's almost a must when doing repeatedly, carving action. So that is, it is an important aspect to mention in a review, that gloves is almost a necessity. Anyways, enough about that, let's get into the actual carving here. So this is what we want to go for, sort of, and this is where we will try to do it. So I see we have some tricky spots here, but hopefully that will not be too difficult to remove. Yeah, let's just get to it, shall we? And I'm gonna use the choil here, I think, but the choil is on the small side compared to the Combat Jungle, so it might be tricky. Oh, and as you can see now, I'm using the recurve, because the recurve actually works nicely for, doing the action I want to do now. It really, yeah, it's like it was almost purpose-built to do this sort of cutting. But you can of course use what I call the main edge. But it's nice to get some use of the recurve. Some people might want to use the recurve only in certain specific tasks to, avoid having to sharpen it too often, because recurves, they do need some extra work when being sharpened, not quite as straightforward. Pun intended. So let's start making this fine tip now. Yeah, I think we're gonna settle with that. So now we have a really nice fine tip. comparing it to this one, I'd say they are pretty equal, right? Yeah, what are you gonna use this for? Yeah, anyways, let's put this one aside for now, so we can focus on the larger piece here. And this will provide a bit of a challenge compared to when I did with the combat jungle here. It was pretty, you know, straightforward, no bumps or anything. Right here we have this area. That's gonna require a little bit extra effort, so I'm gonna start by removing it, so to say. Yeah, that will make things slightly easier, I'd say. I think we'll focus on this length. You know, not the most ergonomical for my back, although that can't be seen in the camera, but I'm standing in a position that is not, well, super ergonomical, so to say. I'm gonna try not to stab myself on this part either. Will make for an interesting video, right? Chop that off a bit. This feels like a little bit like cheating. I didn't do like this with the combat jungle. Then again, I mean, work smarter, not harder, right? Yeah, I think this is pretty good. So this was the combat jungle, and this is where we are at using the trapper. I think this is good enough, but might do some fine tuning. Yeah, this will have to do. Yeah. So that is it for the trapper. Pretty good results. Here we have the combat jungle and the trapper. I'd say they are about even. But I did enjoy using the recurve for this sort of carving. Well, as you might have guessed, it's now time to do some batooning here. I took my axe out and split some of my firewood, some different types of wood and density and hardness. I also found my like 5 years old batooning hammer I did. So I'm gonna put it to some actual use. It's been quite some time. We're gonna start with the slightly smaller pieces and work our way up to the bigger ones here. Yes, so these three are about semi-equal in size, but a bit different in weight and density. Let's start with that one, since that is the smallest one. So yeah, let's put the trapper to some batooning use. And this, I mean, batooning with a recurve, I think, you know, that is kind of strange, but I need to utilize. Oh well, let's just start and see what we can accomplish here. Okay, that went fairly well. So this smaller piece, obviously not, you know, that difficult. So we're gonna step it up a little bit. Here we have a, that is a slightly thicker and a bit different from the last piece. Different could be interesting, I'd say. Okay. So didn't provide that much of a challenge either, meaning we progress to the next large piece here, which is this one. This is probably going to be pretty similar results, so maybe we should have skipped to the bigger pieces right away. Yeah, I'm not even going to, you know, do any additional batooning on these pieces. It's better to just jump ahead and go directly to the larger ones, like this piece. Now we have to utilize some of the recurve. Okay. Yeah, so let's go for something even bigger, perhaps. So let's go with this piece now. Let's make it more for workable size. Yeah. I think I only have one piece left now. That's this piece. Start by removing this. So I guess you can say that Trapper will batoon quite nicely all the pieces that I tried with here. So, batoon it will. Time for some final thoughts and conclusions to end this semi-lengthy video review of the Fox Trapper. And I'm gonna start with the sheath again here. it really is a quite a nice sheath. You know, I am usually a Kydex guy. You know, in 9.9 times out of 10, I will pick a Kydex sheath over a sheath such as, you know, this. But this one time I feel like, you know, this sheath is actually, but it feels justified for the knife. It feels really, you know, purpose built and of exceptionally, you know, high quality as well. So that is, well, it took me a bit surprised, you know, the sheath, that I would feel that way. But for those of you that still feel hesitant or that want a Kydex sheath, because I think that a lot of people would prefer it with this knife, I guess there's always an option to, you know, to order a Kydex sheath from some Kydex custom maker, etc. I mean, there's always a way to get the sheath you want. But I will say that this one feels really sturdy and of great quality. Yes, it has a very tactical approach and look to it, and stated here on the back side of the knife here, it does say Fox Knives Military Division. And I'm not, you know, 100% sure what Fox Knives Military Division looks like, but I guess they are the ones that come up with the more military skew sheets and perhaps knife designs as well. Not 100% sure. So let's unsheath this now and focus a bit more on the knife itself, because this is, well, this is an interesting knife to look at and to talk about. There is no doubt about that. You know, I was very, you know, hesitant in the beginning of this knife, but let me just say that my opinion has shifted during the course of this video review, or, well, not really the entire video review. My opinion shifted quite early on, to be completely honest. But before we talk about more specific elements here, let's take a look here at the coating of the knife. Now that we have done quite a bit of testing, we can see that the coating is 100% intact. There is no wear on the coating. And I mean, I'm not saying the coating will never wear off, because we haven't done, you know, excessive hard work during extended periods of time. But right now, I mean, it's not like the coating wore off when we did batoning, you know, right away or anything like that. So it's nice to see the coating being intact. Not that it is, you know, a problem with coating wearing off, but I always find it to be nice when the coating is actually kind of, you know, what should I put it, like tough or durable, or whatever word to describe it. So, and I will also say that I kind of wish that we had done some more tests with the knife, perhaps a little bit of semi-light chopping or something like that, because this knife is built like a tank. Sure, it is not, you know, it doesn't have a super long blade or edge, but we could have done some minor chopping because it would have withstanded it. And I mean, with the forward, with it being so forward heavy, or not so, but I mean, it is, I think it lends well to doing some, you know, some random chopping action of sorts. But I will say that I think that there is, well, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe there are other videos here on YouTube that showcase this knife doing some other tasks. So maybe you can get a even better understanding of its performance than what you have gotten from my video review. I will say that I am, you know, I'm kind of short of time, at least lately, being a father to a 1-year-old girl, and even though I want to make, you know, really in-depth reviews, I do not always have the time, and I do have a backlog of knives that I really want to show to my viewers. But let's focus on what we did do with the knife. We started with a sharpness test, slicing some paper, and that, well, that showed the trickiness sometimes of a complex blade design like this one. I mean, the knife is sharp and it did slice the paper, but it wasn't as easy as with, let's say, the combat jungle knife. However, after we did the slicing of paper, we went over and started doing some cutting tasks on leather and paracord, and that was a lot easier to work with, and there was no, what we saw slicing paper was not, visible or prominent when we cut the leather or cut the paracord. And after those sharpness tests, we did some actual woodworking. We started by doing some feather sticks, and this knife did some really nice feathers. That I've got to say, and it was, we could utilize the recurve a bit for that. Speaking of the recurve, and the next test we did, which was the wood carving. Wood carving was easy with this knife. It was a breeze, and it was also very nice once again to work with the recurve, doing those pointy tips on those twigs and sticks. And after the wood carving, we went ahead and did some batoning, and well, to no one's surprise, this knife batoned really well. So overall, I think the knife performed quite well for all the tasks we did, but with the initial paper slicing being not as smooth as with many other knives that I have tested. But in terms of actual sharpness, yes, the knife is sharp, and it was sharp, but it was the grind, the complex blade design that made the slicing of paper a bit tricky. So overall, I think that this knife is quite a capable knife. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. I mostly got it because I wanted it to team up with the combat jungle, so I could make some comparisons, etc. But right now I feel like, there is certainly a place for a knife like this. But I will say that much as with the combat jungle, the aggressive jimping here and the really sharp edge here on the spine, that can be, potentially an issue for some people, at least for me. And I also think that, the choil here is on the smaller side, and the heel of the edge here, or the beginning of the edge here, you have to be kind of wary with it, because they could have, made it a little bit less sharp, I think. Would have been appreciated. But those are my two, main concerns, but they are not deal breakers, but it's something to be aware of, I think. Other than that, I feel like, it is like holding a tank in my hand. It feels almost indestructible, I've got to say. A fun, interesting knife to work with, and yeah, I don't see myself, ever finding a knife just like this one in the future, because it feels quite unique in its overall design. That's for certain. And for those people who are afraid of, not afraid, but feel like recurves will be a hassle sharpening, well, it doesn't have to be a hassle, but sure, it will require a bit more effort than perhaps the more straight edge of the combat jungle. But an interesting knife, definitely, that I enjoyed testing out. Fox Trapper.